My name is Sarah Miller. I'm 36 years old, a cybersecurity analyst in Austin, Texas. And 2 hours ago, I watched every cent I had vanish from my accounts in real time. One push notification after another exploded across my phone while I was finishing a late-night report at the kitchen table, blue light from my laptop reflecting off the empty cereal bowls in the sink. At first, I thought it was a glitch. Then I opened my banking app and saw the total. Checking, savings, emergency fund, even the tiny college nest egg I'd started years ago. Emptied. Transferred out through a device I recognized. My brother's. The same brother I once saved from eviction. The same brother I'd trusted enough to leave on as an authorized user when he just needed a little help getting back on his feet. He hadn't just taken a loan. He had cleaned out my life. I stared at the screen, my heart beating so hard it felt like the sound was echoing off the walls. Rent, gone. Tuition, gone. Every sleepless overtime shift. Every freelance gig after my daughter went to bed. All of it. Gone with a few taps from someone who knew exactly how much I depended on that money. I didn't cry. I froze. My mind snapped straight to threat models and attack surfaces, like I was auditing a stranger's breach instead of living my own. Had he guessed my password? Used an old token? I checked the device list and there it was. His cheap Android phone, still linked because I had never imagined he'd use it against me. My stomach turned. Was I the idiot for believing family was a safe exception to the rules I enforced for everyone else? Behind me, a chair scraped. My 10-year-old daughter patted in on socked feet, rubbing her eyes. She took one look at my face, then at the screen lit with red warnings and negative balances. For a second, she just stared, like she was doing some kind of calculation only she understood. Then she squared her shoulders with this tiny, fierce certainty that did not match her unicorn pajamas and said, "Mom, don't worry. I handled it." My brain short-circuited. What could a 10-year-old possibly have handled in the middle of a financial ambush like this? Before I tell you what she really did, and what my brother screamed down the phone 2 days later, tell me, what time is it where you are, and where are you watching from? I want to see just how far one family's betrayal can travel. The second her words left her mouth, I felt my professional brain collide with my mom brain. In the SOC at work, when an intern says, "Don't worry, I fixed it," my first instinct is to ask what they just broke. At home, looking at my daughter's small, serious face, all I wanted to do was protect her from the mess her uncle had dumped on us. "What do you mean, you handled it?" I asked as calmly as I could manage. She climbed onto the chair beside me, swinging her legs like it was just another night, not the moment our lives had been financially decapitated. "You remember when you showed me the banking app?" she said. "You said if anything ever looked weird, I should click this little flag thing and tell you immediately." She reached for my phone with a confidence that should have belonged to someone twice her age. "I was on your phone earlier playing that puzzle game, and I saw a text from the bank about a new login. It sounded sketchy, so I opened the app. The numbers were moving, Mom. Like a video game. So I hit the emergency freeze button and I reported the device." My breath caught. In my panic, I hadn't even noticed the tiny banner at the top of the app. "Temporary hold applied. Suspicious activity under review." For a moment, the room tilted. "You froze the accounts?" "Yeah," she said, almost offended I had to ask. "I remembered what you said about bad guys online. You told me, if something feels wrong, don't be polite. Hit the red button." So I did. On the transaction list, a final transfer sat in limbo, initiated but not yet cleared. My brother had almost gotten away with everything. Almost. My daughter had slammed the digital door on his fingers. Relief crashed into shame. I was the expert, the one companies paid to secure entire infrastructures, yet it was my 10-year-old who reacted fast enough to limit the damage. How did you know the login was his? I asked. She pulled her own tablet out from under her hoodie like she'd been waiting for the question. Because of Find My, she said. You made me share my location with you, remember? You also shared yours and Uncle's with me when we went to the amusement park. You never turned his off. When the bank message popped up, I checked the map and his dot was blinking from some motel outside Houston. You weren't there, so... She shrugged, like basic geolocation sleuthing was just homework. I figured someone was doing something bad. That's when my anger snapped from wild and directionless into a sharp, bright line. My brother hadn't just violated my trust. He'd done it knowing I had a child depending on me. He'd used access I'd given him years ago when I was drowning in debt, and he'd fronted me money for a security deposit. Back then, adding him as an authorized user on one card felt like gratitude. I never removed him when I got stable. I told myself it was proof that family paid each other back. Now that decision had turned into a loaded gun I'd handed him myself. My daughter, Lily, drew her knees up on the chair. Are we going to be okay? She whispered. I don't care about stuff, Mom. Are we going to have to move? The question sliced deeper than any drained balance. We are going to be okay, I said, forcing each word to sound like a promise and not a wish. He tried to take everything, but he underestimated you, and he definitely underestimated me. I pulled her into a hug, my mind already shifting into investigation mode. People online always talk about cutting off toxic family, but what does that actually look like when your toxic family member has your routing numbers and social security? When the betrayal comes from inside the house, do you try to forgive them later, or do you make sure they can never hurt you again? 2 days later, just as I was starting to believe we might survive this with only bruises instead of fractures, my phone lit up with an unknown number and the kind of timing that feels scripted. I was in the middle of a video meeting with my friend and coworker Megan Clark, walking her through the logs I'd pulled from the bank portal. We'd already confirmed the device fingerprint matched the dusty Android my brother refused to upgrade, and we'd drafted an incident report in case I needed to push the bank harder. Lily sat at the far end of the table with her sketchbook, drawing little comic panels of Supermom and Security Girl kicking a cartoon villain out of a bank vault. The number called, again, insistent. Texas area code, but not one I recognized. I muted my mic. Hang on, Meg, let me grab this. The moment I answered, my eardrum was assaulted. What the hell did you do, Sarah? It was him, my brother, Jake Miller. No hello, no apology, just raw panicked rage. For half a second, hearing his voice triggered muscle memory. 2 teenagers in a cramped apartment, sharing instant noodles and promising we'd always have each other's backs. Then the present slammed back. He'd tried to rob his niece blind. Good evening to you too, I said, my voice icier than I felt. How's life outside Houston? He swore again, breathing like he'd been running. Don't play games. You froze the accounts. The bank is asking questions. Their fraud department called me. They're talking about law enforcement. You had no right to stop you from draining my daughter's future. I cut in. Lily's head snapped up at the word daughter, so I mouthed, It's okay, and pointed toward her room. She hesitated, then disappeared with her tablet, closing the door softly behind her. You used access I gave you years ago when I was stupid enough to think family meant something, I continued. You thought you could empty everything and disappear into some motel with your girlfriend. And you're mad because I caught you? He laughed this high, ugly laugh I'd never heard before. Caught me? You think this is over a few transfers? You have no idea what you just stepped into. You flag those transactions. You freeze those accounts. You mess things up for people who don't like their money messed with. You didn't just screw me, you screwed them. Do you have any idea what they do to people who delay payouts? A chill threaded down my spine. Who is they? Doesn't matter, he snapped. All you need to know is, you unfreeze the accounts. You tell the bank it was a misunderstanding, or they'll come for you too. You, and that little girl you're so proud of." The threat landed with a cold, precise weight. Old me, the big sister who used to bail him out and lie to Mom for him, might have caved. But the version of me who'd cleaned up after ransomware crews and traced extortion emails back to cheap offshore bulletproof hosts knew bluff when she heard it. "You think I'm scared of criminals?" I asked softly. "I spend my nights tearing apart malware those geniuses can barely spell. The difference is, they never shared my mom's kitchen. You did. And that makes what you did worse, not better." He cursed again, but this time it sounded less like rage and more like fear. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "You just signed your own eviction notice." He hung up. My hand shook, but not from panic this time, from clarity. He wasn't calling because he cared about our roof or Lily's tuition. He was calling because my 10-year-old had accidentally tripped a wire in whatever scheme he'd tangled himself in, and now his partners were squeezing him. I unmuted my laptop. Megan's face filled the screen, eyes wide. "I caught most of that," she said. "I'm sorry." "Don't be," I replied. "He just admitted enough to hang himself, if we record this properly." We spent the next hour documenting everything: the timestamps, the device IDs, the exact wording of his threat while it was still fresh in my mind. Then Megan leaned closer to her webcam. "Look, you know I consult for that financial crimes task force on the side," she said. "If your brother is using your identity or your accounts as part of a bigger scam, they need to know. Are you ready for this to stop being a family drama and start being a case file?" I looked toward Lily's closed door, where a sliver of light peeked under the frame. "Ready?" No. But had we already crossed the line where this could be handled with a guilty apology and a repayment plan? Absolutely. "If blood is supposed to be thicker than water," I said, "what does it mean when it's the blood that's poisoning the well?" "Yeah. Put me in touch with whoever you trust. If your brother emptied your accounts, threatened your kid, and then blamed you for protecting yourself, would you still call him family? Or would you finally treat him like every other criminal you've ever reported?" That night, after Lily fell asleep clutching her stuffed axolotl, I sat in the glow of my dual monitors, a mug of cold coffee sweating by my elbow, and turned my professional tools on my own life. Megan had looped in a contact from the state's financial crimes unit, a woman named Detective Laura King, who couldn't officially advise me yet but had strong suggestions about preservation. "Document everything," Detective King had said over a choppy video call. "Screenshots, call logs, emails. Don't confront him again directly unless we can coordinate it. And Sarah, this isn't your fault. We see this pattern all the time: fraud that starts as borrowing from people they know." I'd wanted to argue that cybercrime should be impersonal lines of code, not someone stealing their niece's college fund. Instead, I opened a new encrypted vault and started dragging in my life. While downloads churned, I opened Lily's sketchbook. That afternoon, she'd shoved it toward me with a shy grin. "I made a new comic," she'd said. Each page showed 2 timelines. On the left, bright panels of past Uncle, the one who once helped us move into our first safe apartment, who taught her how to flip eggs without breaking the yolk. On the right, current Uncle, eyes shaded, sneaking into a bank vault while tiny cartoon alarms blared. Underneath, she'd written in blocky letters, "People can change, sometimes into villains." I'd laughed then, partly to stop myself from crying. Now the pages felt like evidence I hadn't realized I was collecting. On impulse, I snapped photos of the panels and saved them to the vault too. They weren't legally useful, but they captured what had been stolen that no amount of restitution could buy back. The story of who my brother used to be, rewritten in a child's hand. My email pinged. A message from the bank's fraud department confirmed what Lily's quick thinking had bought us. The final transfer was still in dispute. The money wasn't back in my account yet, But it hadn't reached his either. "We're temporarily restricting the recipient account pending investigation," the message read. Translation: his side of the pipeline had just been choked. 15 minutes later, another notification flashed, this time from a throwaway address I didn't recognize. Subject line: "You should stop digging." No greeting, no signature. Just a single sentence in the body. "Family business is best handled in-house unless you want everyone's secrets spilled." Underneath, a link. Megan's face floated into my mind. Rule 1: never click unsolicited links, especially from someone trying to scare you. I hovered over it instead, inspecting the URL. It led to a public forum I knew well, a hangout for people swapping get-rich-quick tricks that were really just barely sanitized scams. Against my better judgment, I opened it in a sandbox environment. A thread at the top had my first name in the title. Inside, screenshots of my LinkedIn profile, my company's website, a cropped photo of me and Lily at a coding fair. The user who'd posted them had a handle I recognized from old stories my brother used to brag about, a guy called Troy Real. The partner he'd always insisted was just good with people. My stomach dropped. In the comments, users joked about leveraging me to unlock frozen funds, speculated about how much pressure it would take before the sister caves, and one especially charming soul suggested sending a little scare her kids' way. My fingers went numb. Behind me, the floor creaked. I snapped the laptop closed, but not before Lily appeared in the doorway, hair a sleepy halo. "You're still working?" she murmured. "It's late." I forced a smile. "Just finishing up, Bug. Go back to bed. Big day tomorrow." "Are we still going to the art fundraiser meeting?" she asked, brightening slightly. The idea had been hers. If we couldn't get the money back quickly, maybe the community could help. She wanted to organize a digital art sale with her classmates, proceeds going toward Lily's emergency fund. I'd said yes, partly because it made her feel powerful, partly because the thought of accepting help from anyone who wasn't related to me was strangely comforting. "Yeah," I said, "we are. And we're going to talk to some grown-ups who know how to deal with bad guys, too. Okay?" She nodded, then hesitated. "Mom, if he was your brother before, and now he's kind of the villain, does that mean I'm related to a villain?" The question hit harder than any threat in that forum. "You're related to a man who makes terrible choices," I said carefully. "What you do with that is up to you. You can repeat his mistakes, or you can learn from them and build better walls. You've already started doing the second one." She seemed to weigh this, then gave a small, decisive nod and went back to bed. As her door clicked shut, my phone buzzed with a new message from Megan, a screenshot of a profile on the same forum, this one with my brother's handle, quietly advertising investment opportunities using a name dangerously close to mine. "He's not just stealing from you," she wrote. "He's using your identity to lend credibility to his scams." Attached was a short note from Detective King. "We're opening an official case. Do not respond to any threats. When he reaches out again, and he will, let us know. We might be able to turn that contact into leverage." Would you keep scrolling if you found a thread full of strangers planning how to scare you into silence? Or would you start screenshotting and turn their private hustle into evidence? Detective King wasn't wrong. It didn't take long. The next afternoon, while Lily and I sat in a crowded community center brainstorming poster ideas for her art fundraiser with the other kids, my phone vibrated with a new text from another unknown number. This one was shorter, sloppier, angrier. "You think strangers are going to save you? You're making it worse. Call me now." I ignored it. Instead, I watched Lily explain her storyboard to a circle of parents and neighbors, how each piece of art would tell a tiny story of safe money and danger money. She'd drawn a piggy bank with a superhero cape on the flyer. "Kids need to know this stuff too," she told them matter-of-factly. Because sometimes adults don't listen until it's too late. The raw pride that swelled in my chest was almost enough to drown out the dread. Almost. After the meeting, as we headed for the car, a man stepped away from the shade of a live oak tree near the parking lot. My body tensed, but then I recognized the face from grainy photos my brother had once shown me on an old phone. Mark Dawson, former friend, sometime accomplice, the guy who had gotten out of their schemes by going straight at a warehouse job. "Sarah?" he called quietly, hands raised slightly like he wanted to show he was unarmed. "Don't freak out. I texted you earlier. I didn't think you'd answer, so I came here instead." Every instinct screamed at me to grab Lily and run. Instead, I put an arm around her shoulders and said, "Go sit in the car, Bug. Lock the doors. I'll be right there." She obeyed without argument, eyes flicking from Mark to me, reading my posture like a threat meter. When she shut the door, I turned on him. "You have exactly 30 seconds to explain why you're stalking my kid's fundraiser." He winced. Up close, he looked older than I remembered from those photos. Deeper lines around his eyes, shoulders that had lost some of their swagger. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. "If anything, I'm here because I think they might. And I'm trying to stop that before it gets that far." "They?" I repeated. "You mean my brother and his charming business partner?" He glanced around, lowering his voice. "You really want to say their names out loud when you know they hang out on those forums, watch your socials, know your routines?" That caught me off guard. "You've seen the threads?" "I used to post in some of them," he admitted, "back when I thought it was harmless. Chargeback tricks, fake refunds, stuff nobody gets really hurt by. But then they escalated. Crypto exit scams, romance cons, the whole package. Your brother and his girlfriend Haley, they're in deep with a crew that doesn't care who gets hurt as long as the wallets fatten. When you froze those accounts, you cut off more than his little payday. You jammed up a pipeline they were counting on." He swallowed. "They're blaming you. They're scared. And scared people do stupid things." For a second, the parking lot sounds faded, the hum of traffic, the squeak of a shopping cart nearby, and all I heard was my brother's earlier hiss in my ear. "You didn't just screw me, you screwed them." I crossed my arms. "Why tell me this? Why now?" His gaze flicked toward the car where Lily sat watching us. "Because there's a kid involved," he said simply, "and because I've got a kid on the way. My girl is 3 months pregnant. I told myself I was out of that life, but the truth is, I've still been in group chats, still seeing things I don't want my son to grow up around. This," he gestured between us, "it feels like my last shot at doing something decent before I lose the right to call myself a father." I studied him, weighing the risk. If Detective King was going to build a case, an insider could be gold. Or he could be bait. "You're willing to talk to law enforcement?" I asked. "On record?" He flinched, then nodded. "If that's what it takes. I'm not doing it for him," he added quickly. "He made his choices. I'm doing it so you don't have to pay for them." That night, we set up a virtual meeting. Me at my kitchen table, Megan on her dual monitors, Detective King in a small office with file boxes stacked behind her, and Mark sitting in his dim living room, the glow of his TV casting flickers on the wall. He laid everything out, the Telegram channels, the Discord servers, the way my brother bragged about using his cybersecurity sister as a silent endorsement for investment marks. He described drop accounts, mule chains, burner phones. I watched Detective King's expression shift from neutral to focused predator. "We can work with this," she said when he finished. "If you're willing to wear a wire or capture some of these conversations under our direction, we can not only protect Sarah, we can dismantle more than one little hustle." Mark looked exhausted, but strangely lighter. "Tell me where to be," he said. When the call ended, I sat for a long moment staring at the black reflection of my own face in the blank screen. Lily wandered in, hair still damp from her shower, hugging her axolotl. "Is it over?" she asked. "Not yet," I said. "But we're not alone anymore. We've got a team now." She brightened. "Like a squad?" "Exactly." I smiled. "Me, you, Megan, Detective King, and Mark. The good kind of crew." "Can I be the strategist?" she asked eagerly. "I already made a list of all the apps Uncle used and all the times he came over and helped with your computer. That's like data points, right?" I stared at her notebook, densely packed with dates and little icons. Somewhere between comics and cartoons, my daughter had quietly started doing her own intelligence gathering. "Yeah," I said softly. "Those are exactly data points. How far would you go to protect your kid from a criminal who shares your last name, work with one of his old accomplices, wear a wire, walk into a trap you helped set? Or would you cut ties and pray distance was enough?" The trap, when it finally took shape, felt less like a movie sting and more like a meticulously planned panic attack. Detective King's team wanted something clean. My brother, on record, demanding I unfreeze the funds, admitting the money wasn't his, maybe even bragging about the bigger operation he'd plugged into. The problem was, he'd already burned one bridge with that screaming phone call. We needed a reason for him to believe I'd changed my mind. That's where Lily, infuriatingly, came in. "He thinks you're soft," she said one evening as we sat on the floor assembling canvases for the fundraiser. "He thinks if he scares you enough, you'll forgive him like before. So if you call and say you're scared now, he'll believe you." It stung, hearing my history of enabling summarized so neatly by a 10-year-old. It also wasn't wrong. With Detective King listening in on a secure line and the call recorder running, I dialed. He answered on the second ring. "What do you want?" he snapped. I injected a tremor into my voice I didn't entirely have to fake. "You were right," I said. "This is bigger than I thought. They, whoever they are, sent me messages. They know where I work. I can't sleep. I keep thinking about her." I let my voice catch on the last word. "I can't let anything happen to my daughter." He exhaled, the sound almost smug. "Told you, you're out of your depth." "Maybe," I said. "But I talked to the bank. There might be a way to fix this. If you meet me, sign some forms, we can say it was a misunderstanding. Husband and wife account, clerical error, whatever." They like tidy stories. I could almost hear his greed warring with paranoia. "Meet where?" "Town Lake," I said. "The public trail, near the big sculpture. Lots of people. Broad daylight. I'm not going anywhere sketchy." Detective King had insisted. Visible, crowded, cameras everywhere. Less risk to me, more data for them. "Fine," he muttered. "Tomorrow, noon. And Sarah, don't try anything stupid. You're not the only one who can make phone calls." The next day was one of those deceptively beautiful Texas afternoons, sunlight glittering on the water, joggers and families and cyclists turning the trail into a moving tapestry. Under my sweatshirt, a tiny transmitter sat warm against my skin, its wire taped carefully along my ribs. Lily was nowhere near the park. Megan had taken her to a co-working space under the guise of a Bring Your Kid to Code Day, armed with pizza, educational videos, and strict instructions to keep her away from any live feeds Detective King might be monitoring. I still felt her absence like a missing limb. Mark sat on a bench half a block away, pretending to scroll his phone, an earpiece hidden under his baseball cap. He was our early warning system. If my brother showed up with muscle, Mark's job was to tell Detective King's team before I saw them. "He's here," came the detective's murmur in my ear just as my brother's silhouette separated itself from the crowd, hands jammed into the pockets of a hoodie, his eyes darting more than I remembered. He'd lost weight. Or maybe he just looked smaller now that I'd stopped mentally inflating him into the fearless kid who used to stand between me and school bullies. "You look like crap," he said by way of hello. Stress doesn't suit you. Stealing from family doesn't suit you either, I replied, because even wired up and flanked by unseen officers, I couldn't help myself. He rolled his eyes. Are we doing this or not? I held up a folder thick with papers Detective King had helped me prepare. Forms, fake bank letters, enough bureaucratic weight to make the scene look legitimate if anyone was watching. We are, I said. But I need to hear you say something first. Why did you do it? He snorted. Seriously? You want a therapy session in the middle of the park? Humor me, I pressed. If I'm going to commit fraud for you, I at least want the courtesy of honesty. He glanced around, then leaned closer, lowering his voice. Because I was tired of scraping by, he hissed. Because you got out, got your fancy tech job and your nice apartment and your perfect little girl, and I got left with temp work and debts. Because for once, the universe handed me a shortcut. You left the door open, Sarah. I just walked through it. By wiping out your niece's savings, I said. That shortcut? His jaw tightened. I told you I was going to pay it back. With what? I asked. The profits from the scams you and Haley are running using my name? His eyes flashed. You've been talking to people, he said slowly. You think they're your friends? These cops and nerds you work with? You think they're going to keep you safe when the people behind me decide you're more trouble than you're worth? That's the thing, I said, feeling a strange calm settle. You talk about them like they're some unstoppable force, but I've seen their code. I've read their posts. They're just cowards hiding behind screens. And you? You're just a man who stole from a child and got caught. He opened his mouth, words gathering like a storm. And that's when a voice from behind him cut in, sharp and shaking. He's right. You are a coward. We both turned. Haley Brooks stood a few feet away, eyeliner smudged, jaw clenched hard enough to crack teeth. I hadn't seen her in person since a blurry holiday dinner years ago. Now she looked like she hadn't slept in a week. What are you doing here? My brother snarled. You were supposed to stay at the motel. And miss the show? She shot back. Please. I wanted to see if you'd actually lie to her face about paying her back. You told me this was just redistributing from a sister who wouldn't miss it. You never said there was a kid. Guilt flickered across his face, then hardened. You were happy enough to spend the deposits, he said. Don't grow a conscience now. She looked at me, and in that one glance I saw fear, anger, and the brittle edge of someone who'd realized too late she'd picked the losing side. They're watching you, you know, she said. The guys in the group, they think if they squeeze you hard enough, you'll get her to crack. But they're not the only ones watching. Somewhere behind us, a car door slammed. My brother flinched. Shut up, he hissed. You want all of us in cuffs? Maybe that's better than spending the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, she snapped. I'm done being your shield. He reached for her arm, fingers digging in, and that was enough. We've heard what we need, Detective King said in my ear, calm as a metronome. Step back, Sarah. I took one step away. 2. Then everything happened at once. Plainclothes officers converging from 3 directions, badges flashing, voices barking commands. My brother spinning, trying to bolt. Mark standing up from his bench, hands visible. Haley freezing like a deer in headlights as Detective King herself stepped in, reciting rights in a tone that suggested she'd done this 100 times and never stopped seeing the human cost. My brother's eyes met mine as they cuffed him. For a moment, the fury drained out, leaving something hollow. You did this, he said, almost wonderingly. To your own family. No, I said quietly. You did this to yourself. I just stopped you from doing worse. He screamed then. Not words, just raw frustration, the sound echoing off the water as they led him away. Later, Lily would watch the news clip and ask why he yelled like that. I'd tell her the truth. That sometimes, when people finally meet consequences they never expected to face, it's not remorse that erupts first. It's disbelief that the rules actually applied to them after all. If you saw your own sibling in handcuffs, would you feel guilt for being the one to call in backup, or relief that the cycle you'd been trapped in your whole life might finally be breaking? In the weeks that followed, life didn't magically snap back into place. There were depositions, court dates, paperwork stacks taller than Lily, and long evenings where I sat at the dining table filling out victim statements while she did math homework on the other end. Detective King's team peeled back layers of the scam like the world's ugliest onion, not just my drained accounts, but dozens of others. Lonely retirees, single parents, even a nonprofit that thought they were investing surplus funds for high-yield returns. The more we learned, the harder it became to remember the kid who'd once split his last slice of pizza with me. At the preliminary hearing, I sat behind the bar with Megan on one side and Mark and his pregnant girlfriend on the other. Haley testified too, voice shaking but steady, describing late-night meetings and instructions barked through encrypted apps by men who never used their real names. My brother avoided my gaze, jaw clenched so tight I wondered if he'd crack a molar before the judge finished reading the charges. Identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy. When the prosecutor laid out how he'd used my credentials as a trust anchor to lure victims, something inside me finally snapped the rest of the way. Any lingering fantasy about the brother I used to know dissolved. This was who he had chosen to be. Months later, he took a plea deal. 15 years, with restitution obligations that would likely follow him long after parole. No dramatic last-minute apology, no teary confession, just a signed agreement and averted eyes. The bank, under pressure from both regulators and bad press, quietly agreed to cover a significant portion of my losses, citing internal access control failures. It didn't erase the sleepless nights, but it meant Lily and I wouldn't be packing our lives into boxes and moving into some basement. A chunk of the seized funds was allocated to victims, including us. When the letter came, Lily watched me open it, fingers twisting the hem of her t-shirt. "Is it over?" she asked. Over turned out to be the wrong word. "We're safer," I said. "That's a better word." Safety became our new baseline project. I sat her down and walked her through credit freezes, two-factor authentication, why we don't reuse passwords even for boring sites. She showed me the notebook where she'd logged all the apps my brother had ever touched on my phone. Tiny red skulls next to the ones that gave her a bad feeling. Together we made a poster for her school's tech fair, How to Protect Your Future, even from family. The title raised a few eyebrows among the teachers until I volunteered to give a short workshop for parents on digital hygiene and financial boundaries. Standing in front of that room, explaining to other tired, overworked adults why helping a relative by sharing logins or letting them fix your computer could be more dangerous than any stranger on the dark web, I felt something shift. For years, I'd drawn a hard line between my work in cybersecurity and my personal life, as if the rules didn't apply at home because love somehow encrypted everything. Now I knew better. Love without boundaries isn't security, it's exposure. One evening, months after the sentencing, I found Lily at the kitchen table working on a new comic. This one showed our squad lined up in superhero poses. Me with a laptop shield, Megan firing code like confetti, Detective King wielding a giant badge, Mark holding a baby in one arm and tearing up a fake credit card with the other. Off to the side, behind bars made of ones and zeros, a small figure sat with his head in his hands. She'd drawn a caption bubble above him. I thought shortcuts would set me free. Underneath, in block letters, but real freedom isn't built on someone else's ruin. "Do you think he'll ever say sorry?" she asked without looking up. I considered lying. "Maybe someday," I said instead. "But we can't live our lives waiting for that. The real apology is what we do with what happened, the walls we build, the people we help, so they don't end up where we did. She nodded, seemingly satisfied, and added one last speech bubble next to the drawn version of herself. Boundaries aren't mean, they're safety rails. Later that night, alone with my thoughts, I scrolled back through old photos. Two kids in thrift store clothes, leaning against each other and laughing. A young man holding a newborn Lily with terrified pride. A blurry Thanksgiving where he'd washed dishes without being asked. I didn't delete them. Pretending those moments never existed wouldn't make the last year any less real. Instead, I created a new album and named it Before. The rest of my camera roll, the court selfies, the fundraiser photos, the tech fair poster, Lily's comics, became After. The line between them wasn't clean, but it was honest. Family, I'd learned, isn't a magic shield against harm. Sometimes it's the source. The trick is learning when loyalty is love and when it's just fear dressed up as obligation. When someone uses your trust as their favorite exploit, you have every right to patch the vulnerability, even if it means cutting them off from the system entirely. So now I'll ask you what I ask myself on the nights when the house is quiet and the notifications have finally stopped. When blood betrays you, what's the real lesson? Endless forgiveness, no matter the cost, or the courage to say, this is where my story changes, even if yours doesn't. And if you've ever had to build a new life on the rubble of a family betrayal, what boundary did you wish you'd drawn sooner?